So we're streaming live on YouTube, just to let everybody know. And we all would think by now, after what, 9 months on Zoom, we'd all be experts, but there's always some technical difficulty.
So Matt, it's still the same thing. We might just have to keep you muted. Oh, I think he'll come back and join us in a minute. I'm glad it did not cut everybody off when he left. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to wait for some more people to join, and we'll get started in a few minutes.
We could talk about the color temperature of LEDs, Nikki, because I can see you're in your office at Walking Mountain Science Center, so you must have like a 4,000 Kelvin or something. Where I'm at my home with a little yellower, little warmer lights, so 2,700 Kelvin. So
yeah, we have some pretty nice lights. This is the newer building with kind of a newer lighting system in it. So I don't know the exact information on the lights in my office. I probably should. But it's dimmable, so it's at the highest
yes.
highest intensity right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know, something with when I hit the mute button on Zoom and then come back into the conversation, that's where it's, I don't know.
Okay, well, not that we don't want to hear from you, Matt, but if it happens again, it's okay for you just to stay muted and it probably will be fine.
Okay, and I will do that. And just to let everybody know that we're not actually live on YouTube, we just have a YouTube channel that we'll be able to share that link out to everybody after.
Great.
And now I am going to go mute, and Nikki, just let me know if you need anything.
Thanks. Will you make me a co-host again? I think it changed it back.
I think you are the host.
Oh.
Yes, you are
okay,
the
cool.
host.
All right. I thought maybe something changed on my screen, but it must not have. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. It's 5:30. I want to welcome you all. We're going to start a recording of this now. Matt's going to start a recording, and there will be a recording link sent to you later. So welcome everyone to our cold climate heat pump consumer talk series. Today, this week, we are talking about propane customers and what you can do if you want to kind of switch to a cold climate electric heat pump and what you need to know about that. So Dave Petroy is here for us today to give us some instruction and just a few housekeeping things to talk about first. Again, like I said before, this is being recorded. We will send you a link to this recording so you can watch that later or share with others. You are automatically muted, so you're not going to be able to say anything, but if you do have questions, we would love for you throughout the webinar at any time to go ahead and type those in the Q&A box. If we can answer those by typing throughout the webinar, we will, but we will also have plenty of time at the end for Dave to answer questions for us. I want to say thank you to our partners that helped us host this and bring Dave to us to present this to you: Colorado Energy Office, Garfield Clean Energy, Holy Cross Energy, Walking Mountain Sustainability, Energy Smart Colorado, and CORE, the Community Office for Resource Efficiency. Together, we are all bringing this to you today over the high country area, everywhere that Holy Cross area services customers. And Mary, I'm going to hand it over to you. Mary Wiener's the Energy Efficiency Program Administrator at Holy Cross Energy, and she's going to introduce our instructor to us.
Thanks, Nikki. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us, or at least the first half. So I want to introduce our speaker. our presenter, I should say, our Zoom specialist, our Zoom presenter, Dave Troy. Dave has 15 years or more experience in energy sustainability, and he actually founded the Blue Valley Energy, which is located in Boulder, which was a ground source heat pump, which he'll talk a little bit about today, since he's a little bit of an expert there. He's the leader of sales at the RMS Electric, and he also founded the NTS Energy. And Dave, I guess I never asked you what NTS really stands for, so maybe you can share that. He's got an MS in geophysics from Washington State and then a BS in zoology, which is a very interesting combo. So welcome, Dave, and welcome everybody for joining us tonight. We're really glad you could join us.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Mary, and thanks, Nikki. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for deciding to spend a little time with us. NTS stands for New Technologies and Solutions and Zoology. I love animals, but I've kind of had a different career than that. So let's talk a little bit about heat pumps today. I have about, I think, 38 slides. I try to get through them in 35 to 40 minutes, and we have lots of time for questions. And we're going to talk about cold climate heat pumps. Whenever I say heat pumps throughout the rest of the talk, refers to cold climates. We'll talk about how they work and how they evolved. And then for those, how do you consider changing over or incorporating a heat pump into your home if you've got propane furnaces or boilers? We'll talk about mini splits and a little bit about one of my favorite topics, geothermal heat pumps. We'll talk about ways to address indoor air quality and improve that. Good system design, talking with contractors and how do you get a good system, and some great incentives and local contacts. So let's talk about what are heat pumps to start. And there's two pictures here. Basically, a heat pump has two components: an outdoor unit that looks just like a conventional air conditioner, and then in the inside is either an air handler, or sometimes you can put it in conjunction with a furnace. So that's where the blower is. This over here is called a mini split or ductless air condition heat pump system. The unit outside basically has the same function, has a little different look to it, but then it connects to several units inside your house. And each of these units is connected by a pair of refrigerant lines. And over here, I forgot to mention a pair of refrigerant lines there. So how does it work? Well, heat pump, don't think of it as moving. It basically extracts heat, concentrates it, and moves heat, not temperature. And it's an air conditioner. It's just reversible. So let's just take a quick review of how this works. And in the appendix is a more detailed diagram. This is the unit. This is inside. So this would be your air handler or your blower or your furnace. This is the outside. All this is in that outside box. So let's start where the refrigerant, and a refrigerant is a chemical that loves to absorb heat. If you put a refrigerant on a stove in a pan next to your boiling water, the refrigerant would boil almost instantly or very, very quickly. So it's coming out of our house in one of the two refrigerant lines, a little bit cool now because it's given up all its heat. It comes into what's called an expansion valve. And all it is it means it's a place where there's more room. The refrigerant expands. And when a refrigerant expands, it cools down. And so what you want, the amount of expansion, you basically want to get it to be colder than the outside air. And believe it or not, refrigerants with these great properties of heating and cooling can expand and become chilled. So even if it's like 10 degrees out, this will be below zero. It will come in here and heat moves from warm to cold. So the refrigerant will go up through the coil in the outside unit with fan air blowing over it, and it'll absorb heat from the outside air. And like I said, even if it's cold out, air still has some heat in it. It absorbs as much as it can going through its journey, and then it comes in to the compressor. Now, depending on what the outdoor temperature is, it gives how much compression it has to have, because going into your house, the refrigerant needs to be about 100 degrees. So what happens when it's really cold, we might have to do a little more compression, squeeze that refrigerant, warm it up, change it into a bit of a gas. Or if it's pretty warm out, say 55, we might not have to put that much energy, comes in here, and the temperature right in here is going to be basically between 95 and 105 degrees. And it's going to go through the coil, and the air is going to go by it and heat your home. So a very simple process. Now let's talk about the evolution of heat pumps. I'm going to, for a moment, talk about classic heat pumps. So since the 1950s, heat pumps have been installed in homes with air conditioners. So air conditioners were installed in the South, and heat pumps were even installed in the South just to give a little heating. And this is an old train map, and this is basically where they were designed to work. They were not designed to work below 32 in freezing climates. Now, occasionally people in the northern climates would put a heat pump in and say, I'll use it for the warm times of the year. But the problem with that is things would get, the technology got a reputation. It doesn't work in Colorado. It doesn't work where it's cold. Well, it didn't work very well because it's not designed to do that. In about 2005, a lot of people who work with heat pumps said there's really no reason that we can't work on heat pumps and make them work in all climate zones in North America. There's a few things we need to overcome, better technology, but fundamentally there's no reason not. And the other driver factor was there was a little bit of spike in fuel prices around 2009 or so, between 2008 and 2010. And in New England, fuel's very expensive, and up here more so than Colorado. So they started to put in a lot of these heat pumps. And also some manufacturers from Japan started to bring over heat pumps. So heat pumps have been installed, thousands of them in New England and in northern Minnesota in the cold climate zones, like in the middle of our state. So it's a technology that's been out there and functioning great. So what did they actually do? Well, I don't want to dwell on this a lot, but the engineers had a lot of stuff to play with inside this box to improve. So the compressor, which notice here, this is the key thing, the compressor, that uses the most energy. They made them variable speed, called scroll compressors. So they worked on the technology of the compressors. They made the blowers more efficient, better fan blades, very smart controls. Now the compressor, how much energy it puts in matches how much you need in your house. An improved heat exchanger. So all this area over in here, the heat exchanger got better. And the most important thing probably is they worked on systems, on methodologies to deal with the defrosting, because if the thing frosted up, it's not going to work in cold climates. So the result of all that, before I get into some of the good benefits of that, let's talk about some in terms, because you're going to really need to know a few things here. Tons is not this dude here. Tons is heating and cooling tons. It's a measure of how much heat you need to heat your home. And 1 ton is 12,000 BTUs per hour. Most homes are in the range of 3 to 6 tons. So 36,000 to 72,000 BTUs per hour. And that's how people design systems and size them correctly. The other term you've heard probably a lot is SEER, which is a measure of cooling. Every air conditioner has it. It goes between 15 and 24. The higher the number, the better. The next thing, which is somewhat the mirror of SEER, and this is very important for heat pumps, is called HSPF, Heating Season Performance Factor. And that says, how well will that heat pump heat your house? How effective during the winter? The higher the number, the better. And we'll talk more about that. Coefficient of performance is another way to measure how efficient things are. Higher number, the better. And I'll talk a little bit about that more. And basically that can do heating or cooling. It sort of doesn't matter. It's a direct comparison. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is a lot of people who have heat pumps talk about, oh, the air coming out of the ducts isn't warm. Well, it's not going to be warm like a furnace. Furnace temperatures coming out are warm. Heat pumps, as I said, are 95 to 105. So like when I was a kid growing up skating and numb my feet, I wouldn't have wanted to put my toes in front of a heat pump vent. However, it feels just neutral. And remember, we're only trying to heat a house to 72 degrees. So plenty of warmth, though it might not feel really warm when it comes out. And the last thing is called derating. And that's basically how sizing a system to compensate for altitude. And that's really a unique thing to Colorado and our high elevations, is you have to take into account that when sizing your system. So all this work went into this class of heat pumps called cold climate heat pumps. Well, what did it do? On the left side is that measure of efficiency. and the axis goes from 0 to 14. And on the bottom is the time. And so this is 2012, about there. And the best unit you could get would be 8.2 HSPF. And over time, over the years, every year, 1 or 2 points. And now the best is 13 HSPF. Most systems right now, cold climate heat pumps run between 10 and about 12. So the market, there's tons of systems available there by all the manufacturers. Well, that improved the efficiency quite a bit. So 13 is 59% better than the old ones. 11 is 34% better. So that improvement alone is what made the economics of heating with heat pump, cold climate heat pumps, a lot more effective in our climates. The next thing is capacity. And it used to be that, and let me explain what this is here. On the bottom is outdoor temperature. 0 is on the left side, all the way to 70 degrees on the right. And this is, the green line is how much heat a hypothetical house would need in a model. So this home needs only 5,000 BTUs per hour when it's 60, and it goes up, and when it's 0, it needs 60,000. So that would be a 5-ton heating load, 12,000 BTUs per ton. So over here, these lines are the evolution of heat pumps and how capable they are. So the first line that goes down here low, that's the old technology. That's the classic heat pump. And remember, they used to only worry about them heating down to 32 degrees. It was basically for cool nights in Texas. Now, over the years, they've worked on these cold climate heat pumps, and each line up as it gets progressively higher is the capacity. And notice now these heat pumps have a higher capacity, and all the way down in the teens, they match this. Well, there's a little gap here, and that's usually compensated for with a little electrical in the back of the system. But we'll see in the next couple slides that actually, even though it's freezing and we think we use a lot of energy here, we really don't in our climate. Most of the energy used heating is in the middle of the cold climates. So this is Colorado, very unique situation. We have 4 climate zones. No other state in the US has 4 climate zones. Hardly any place in the world has 4 climate zones. And what you're going to think about is 2 climate regions. So in the high altitudes in the mountain, it's zones 6, 7. And really, even though climate-wise they're distinct, I'm going to talk about them as one. And when you're thinking about heat pumps in Colorado, they're really pretty much the same, because the difference literally is more in the summer than in the winter. And on the eastern plains in the Front Range, we have 4, 5, and on the western southwest corner, we have 5 also. Now, everything I talk about today with regards to energy savings and money savings is really focused on here. I use sort of the eagle as a standard for this area, but it applies for those of you who live out here or live out there or work in there. It applies there. It's just that the economics and the savings will be even better because these are slightly more favorable to heat pumps. And this diagram talks about what I was mentioning, how much energy we use at different times of the year in heating. So the bottom is outdoor temperature, and it starts, I got all the way to deck to -20, all the way up to 62. This is Eagle, Colorado, and this is the percent of the annual energy use at each of those different temperatures. So most of the time, October through April, it's mild, it's out here. That's about 1/3 of the energy use annually. March through November, in some of the winter, is this big chunk in the middle, 49%. Now remember, so cold climate heat pumps very easily handle all of this. And notice that's over 80% of your annual heating. And even down in here, the cold climate heat pumps are designed to work well down to 0. If some of the mini splits go all the way out to -15. And so the cold climate heat pumps are able to do a lot of this. And remember, when I talk about, we use a little bit of backup electrical or some other backup in here, it's for very small amounts of your actual annual heating. So when we're talking about comparing propane to heat pump, there's really no sort of magic to it. It really comes down to these efficiency measures, and it basically comes down to how much energy you get out of burning something versus just moving heat. and a furnace, oh, a little mistake. I said 98% furnace, COP 96, that'd be actually 0.98 instead of, or vice versa. A cold climate heat pump is around a COP of 3. Remember, coefficient of performance, higher the number, the better. So really, it says for every unit of energy in, I get basically 3 times as much out. If I divide it by 0.96, 3 times more efficient. So a heat pump uses roughly 68% less energy to heat your home than propane. And at current electrical prices and propane prices, you're going to cut your heating bill by 50%, about 50% plus or minus a little bit switching, because per unit the propane is still, they're close in price, but slightly less. So it's huge savings right now. And let's talk about, we're going to now talk getting into your house and discussing, okay, what can you actually do? And so there's a couple configurations. This picture you saw at the beginning, and this is for propane furnace replacement. So we'll talk about, you can do a heat pump, replace both your furnace and put a heat pump and an air handler. In some cases, you can do them heat pump with the propane furnace. We're going to also talk about the situation where you have a propane boiler and radiant in-floor heating. And this is a picture of a heat pump system that creates hot water. And so this system basically runs in, sends hot water to a buffer tank, which is going to supply the hot water to your radiant floor. And typically it'll be in conjunction with either a propane boiler, or in the case if you want to go all electric, this can be electric boiler, because with a correct design, the heat pump's going to do most of the heating. The other option is you can do some mini splits to take some of the load off. So let's just go through a few numbers here and say, well, okay, what's it cost? What's it going to save? So this is let's call it a townhouse up in Eagle. And this is one of these modeling programs that figures out, oh, how much heat do I need? You put in a model house, you build it. 40,000 BTU. So this is a smaller place. It only needs about 3.5 tons. And you run the models. And here is, this is propane furnace. This is the heating amount for a heat pump with a little electrical in the back. And this is a generic heat pump in combination with a propane furnace. And what happens is the single heat pump in this case is going to basically do the whole house down to about 15F. And then these units, either electrical or the propane, is going to work in conjunction and complete the heating of your house during those colder times of the year. But it's not much, remember. So how does that all work out? Well, here's your average heating cost, and this is how much money you would save, about half, cuts it in close to half. And then this is cost to replacements. And remember now, the price varies. You're going to get bids all over. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but trying to get sort of a median price. Holy Cross has wonderful rebates. At the end, there's details of that. Very per ton, very nice rebates for heat pumps. This one's a little more because if you switch over to all electric home, you get a little bit more of a rebate. This is system with a hybrid. So the columns are propane furnace, heat pump system, little electrical inside of it, heat pump and propane furnace together. That's what those 3 columns. So we're comparing them. This is the cost after the rebates. So notice the rebates really get the cost down. And with these savings, you're going to get your money back in under 5 years. Don't read 3.0. I mean, if it's 3.1 or 4.1, this is to get you a good idea of where it's going to be. This is the annual heating cost. And now what if you want to just finance all this? And this would be a 5% 7-year loan. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. And the annual cost, notice the heat pumps, both options save quite a bit over just going with the propane furnace for the first 7 years. And then obviously your savings would be great after that. So the same thing now, I wanted to look at a little bigger home. This is 23 to 2,700 square feet. Similar thing, you run the model. I'm here. Since it's a bigger home, I might need to use a little more of the backup, not a lot. Don't want to dwell on that. Let's go to the real numbers here. So the average heating costs, and again, no surprises, quite honestly. And then this is a little bit more of a cost, a little bit bigger systems, a little more rebates, and notice very nice paybacks, the difference. We're talking about the difference here. And then annual heating costs, and if you finance that, obviously a little more to finance it, but still, even for the first 7 years, you would save a fair amount of money per year financing the system. And then obviously for the rest of the life, you have great savings. So what about larger homes? Well, larger homes, you're going to have to look at a little different strategy. You can decide and say, well, you're going to need sort of two heat. If you want to, I'll go to number 2. If you want to do your whole home, you're going to basically need to do a couple of heat pump systems. So you can do it a couple ways. You can think about your house. If it's 2 levels, you can do the top story with one system, maybe a mini split, which I'll talk about in a few slides, and then the duct system below with the smaller one. That's a great way to do it. Or you could add a mini split to do a great room in the downstairs and then do a heat pump for the rest of the house. So there's strategies there. Or you can just say, well, I'm going to just convert half my home to a heat pump. Maybe the second floor is uncomfortable. Maybe a wing or half the house is not heating well, or it's not, or you say I want cooling. So you can do that, and the economics will still look like the little townhouse presented. The other option with the bigger houses, you replace the furnace and you can go with the hybrid heat pump propane furnace system, because furnaces do have a little more capability. So you have some really, really nice options with some larger homes. Let's talk about with a propane or electric boiler. And this is for homes up to 2,000 square feet. These units that produce hot water, heat pumps, are great. It's a little bit more difficult for them to do than just the air. I've showed this before, so really simple. Your plumber or your person who put in your system, they're going to come in and basically they're going to add this tank in here, and your boiler going to go through a buffer tank, and you're going to add in the heat pump, and very nice system. But there's a few things you really need to think about. First of all, it works with radiant in-slab, warm board, basically 120-degree water, because these heat pump systems can produce water in the 110. 120 is kind of about the top side. So you really, if you have high temperature baseboards, it's not really a system for you. You can go through and replace your baseboard with high efficiency radiators. And that's an option. I would really talk to my contractor and really brainstorm whether that's a strategy, or go with sort of mini splits or other different strategies. It's not something you can do quickly. Like, you can't call them up and say, my boiler failed, I want to do this hybrid system. You really need to plan ahead. If you got an old boiler, and basically what you can do is just in the summertime or whenever things are slow, talk to some of the contractors and say, give me some quotes for this. For larger homes, you're gonna need to add more than one of those units. But also the other option is, if it's 3,000, you can consider a ground source heat pump. And so what would happen? So let's just talk about for a heat pump boiler in a townhouse, small system. You're going to have savings, again, nice savings, maybe not quite as much as with the air, because it's a little harder for these heat pumps to work. Again, with the rebates, the savings is around 5-year, 4.5-5-year payback. And if you finance it, you basically have a little bit of savings versus this. But over the long haul, it's great savings. So let's get into just a brief touch on one of my favorite topics, ground source heat pumps. And again, they're for in-floor radiant heating. Now, ground source heat pumps, the way they work, let's look at this diagram. Basically, in the mountains up here, you'll drill boreholes, and they might be anywhere from 180 to 300 feet. So you get the excitement of having a drilling rig outside of your place. You can invite the local 3rd grade class, like I did when I did them in my house. These type of horizontal pond loops are more for the plains. So maybe in the eastern plains of Colorado, do that. And then inside, what's nice is the heat pump unit's actually inside. So the it's a water with the glycol mix comes in, and that's what carries the heat. So really the ground, the heat's getting exchanged in the ground, which doesn't change temperature much during the winter. So it's much more effective and efficient. And then it'll do the same thing. It'll heat a water tank, and you might not need a boiler in this case because they have more capacity, not as dramatic changes with the winter. Or a lot of cases, depending on how much you need, you might still have a boiler in there, especially if it's a newer boiler. It doesn't hurt to keep it in there. And then you have underfloor heat. Now, this thing can dramatically cut your bills by 65% or more because they have a very nice COP in the winter, coefficient of performance. Higher the better, because it's not trying to pull heat from very cold air. It's just trying to pull heat from a relatively warm ground. So to give you an idea, down in here, the temperature is the average temperature. So probably up, I think in Eagle, maybe 45, the average annual temperature. And I mentioned you can completely replace our hybrid. Equipment's indoors, low maintenance, long lifespan. One system can supply large homes. Now, this is, not cheap. Prices start at 40, but you have a federal tax credit, a nice federal tax credit of 26%. Sorry, I'm turning my phone to not make noise, interrupt us. And so that would be about $30,000. But given the big savings, it's something, if you have a large home, clearly worth considering. I've mentioned about mini split ductless systems. These are great, and this technology's been out about 10 years, and it's more widespread, very worldwide. And they're really flexible systems because you can look at certain areas of your house, and for that section, you can be able to really reduce your bill. And here's just another picture: outside unit, a couple inside units. Let's look at what you can do now architecturally. They're very nice. I mean, they're beautiful options. These are the the old style on the wall, which is fine. But now you can put, if you have an attic, you can put these cassettes up there. They have these nice floor units. One I really like is a slim duct. I can fit up in the attic, so you just have ducts. This also could be fit in the basement and turned up and do some of your first floor. So there's really, really great options for this kind of stuff. And some of the applications. So you can literally, if you have an attic and you say, well, the whole second floor I'd like cooling, it's uncomfortable. You can take the whole second floor off the main system. In addition, you can get comfort. You can convert a section of your home from full. So if you have radiant, this is another option. You can turn the radiant down and have it just as floor warming for that section, and actually then use the mini split heat pumps to heat. And floor warming still uses energy, but it uses a lot less energy than actually having to heat your house. When you run water at a floor warming temperature of mid 70s versus having to run it at 100, 110. Main floor uncomfortable wings. If you're doing additions, this is a great way because it's a very simple system to put in. You don't have to think about extending ducts or upsizing your main system. One mini split can do about 1,500 square feet up in the high country. And usually you can do 4 or 5 rooms. Like you can go up and, you can do these as individual rooms, or you can put one of these and do a couple of rooms together. So in addition to the monetary and the comfort benefits, there's very big picture benefits for those of you who are concerned about climate change. And this is relative GHG. And so over on the left side is the amount. And this line is basically about where the average car puts out. So we're not talking about little gains for those of you who say, well, I want, thinking about buying EVs. A lot less expensive to do, by changing out your heating system. So this is a propane furnace, 2021. And then this is the propane furnace in 2027. So because, electricity, the grid's going to get greener, not much change, mostly propane, a little bit to do the fan. Let's compare 2021 with a heat pump. Dramatic change. You've got about 20% down already. But by 2027, this is in Holy Cross's region, but all the utilities are committing to more renewable grid. So all of a sudden, since the heat pump uses a lot more electricity, this is a big drop, and this is going to drop to 2030 way down here. So suddenly you're saving almost as much energy as if you bought an EV. And there's other ways to do it. Holy Cross has a nice called a Pure program where your electricity is all renewable right now. And obviously you can, if you have solar on your roof already, that helps power it. At the same time you're thinking about this, I'd like to talk a bit about indoor air quality because it goes hand in hand, and there's a lot talk about indoor air quality. We're getting shut in for fires and things, so and warming up. So that you really want to think about this, and there's really new and improved technologies to deal with that. People are finding out more and more that stoves right in your kitchen, they're a direct source of of indoor air pollution, and maybe not the best thing to be breathing all the time. And the cool thing is there's induction stoves and new electric stoves. I just got an electric stove, and the time to heat stuff up is really fast. If you've got already an old furnace, you really want to look at it, make sure it's been installed, or venting, that could be a problem. And we're talking about heat pumps, so it could be time to think about a heat pump. The cool thing now, when your water heating needs replaced, you can do an electric heat pump water heater, and that's a nice system, and it can cut your water heating bill compared to propane. And I know everybody loves the wood fireplaces. If you don't have one and want one, or it's getting old, pellets are great, and they're widely available. And in the Rocky Mountains, they're sourced throughout the Rocky Mountains. Actually, a lot of technology has been put into how well and effective these pellet fireplaces are. The second thing, aside from indoors, getting fresh air in. Opening the windows is a perfect strategy, but if it's really cold out, you might not want to do that, or really hot for those of us down in the plains. HRV is a heat recovery fresh air. It's just a box. And what happens is cold air comes in the winter, goes through this box, but at the same time, a little fan's bringing a little warm air through your out, and it exchanges it in here. So it preheats this air coming in. And so it's not near as cold, and it saves some energy. And the other thing about it is often this shows a unit. If I had a radiant floor, I could do a little fresh air into my upstairs. Normally you don't have the availability to run all the way down. I could put it in the basement, do the first floor. Or if you're doing a furnace, this can be integrated with the furnace, so it can provide fresh air to your whole house. Excuse me. Let me get a couple. I need a water break here a second. Let's talk real quickly, or not real quick. Let's talk a little bit about how you're going to know you're going to get a great system. Manual J is the magic word, and that's what people use. They build, model your home in the computer, and they can calibrate it to how much you're actually paying and using. And they'll pick the climate. Here's Eagle. -6 is the design 99.6% of the time. You could say, well, gosh, it has to go to -16. Yeah. But you don't want to over design. Notice all the way to -6, there's only on the average about 14 hours below that. So it doesn't mean you're not going to get a system to do that heating, but you don't want to overdo things. So what happens? You saw this diagram before. This is outdoor temperature, and this is heating capacity. And this is my house. It needs this much, this green line. Now, if someone comes in and they're not going to necessarily show you this, but we'll talk about what they're going to show you. But so they have a heat pump that's way down here. Well, that's not big enough. It crosses at 25. You're going to have this gap. Now, in some cases, if it's a really big home and you had to go to 2 systems, you might say, well, okay, what's the trade-offs? But typically, you're going to try to get a nice match. This is in the teens. This one's a little better match. It tails off, but not a lot of heating in there. But if they come up with someone come up with a system here with the heat pump, that's how much a heat pump's put out. That's even a nicer match. Only a little bit left in there. So This is important to try to get the best match possible. So when a contractor comes in and they're proposing stuff, this is a list of questions, and this is going to be on available. Did you use manual J to size it? Does it qualify for the rebates? Certain rebates have qualifications. Basically, like the heat pumps have to be HSPF of a 10 and above, and there's other ones about how much heating you can do with backup. So make sure that qualifies for the rebates. What did you design indoor, 68 or 72? What's my load? How much heat does my house need at 17 and 0? And the reason I picked those two, that's sort of standards. Did you derate the system for altitude? So up in the mountains with air systems at 6,700 feet, the system can only output 78% of the heat because it's less air, thinner air. And now they're picking heat pump. Well, what's the heat pump? What's the heat pump outputs? What's the minimum outdoor temperature the equipment should work? And, if you're up here, it should work to down about 0. And then you maybe have a little bit of that electrical backup or close to 0. How many hours a year will system use supplemental heat? So this, don't take this literally. Wow, Dave said 0 and you're saying 5. This is really the important question. How many hours is going to use backup, and what's that going to cost me? And they can answer that. They can say, well, in this case, I can do one system, a little more electrical backup, but I can't get any better. I'd have to go to 2 systems or something. For mini splits, remember they have to take care of the outdoor and the indoor units for altitude, which means when you're looking at indoor units, say this room needs this much heat, you have to make sure that little indoor unit can do it. This is a great question. Why is your cold climate heat pump product better than others? And there's some great products, and they'll talk about it. Hey, this is the way we do defrost. This is how we control. This is that. And you'll learn a lot. So if you're replacing a furnace with a heat pump system, make sure they size it as large as possible, but you might have a little troubles with the ducts because the ducts might be not quite big enough. So that's the trade-off. But you really do want to do as much on the heat pump and less on whatever the backup system. And ask them, is the duct system good enough for the heat pump size? Look at improvements like this one here. This is obviously an old install, and that's what they did. No worries, but it's time to make it better, more efficient, better flow, the thermostat. And this is important. If you're going to go to all this work, you're going to have a new system. Make sure the rooms that were uncomfortable become comfortable. It's easy to zone a first floor into a couple wings. You can seal and insulate. And if it's a second floor, say, oh, what about a mini split? So up in the high country, a few things. The noise levels, they've really improved. And the indoor units are whisper quiet. I mean, I've slept in bedrooms and you can't really even hear them. The outdoor units, they're getting better and better. It's like a quiet, it's like an air conditioner, maybe a little bit quieter. So think about where you're going to have them. It's nicer if they get some sunshine. This is important. This one's nice. That's way off the ground. If that's up in Vail, that's beautiful. That's the left side. This one, not so good. I don't really want to go out and shovel out my heat pump before I get heat in my house. That's not fun. This is a nice cover, but make sure they're high enough off the ground. Their sort of standards is 18 inches, but we're unique in Colorado. Vail 31. So I look at the average snow depth of the maximum month. Vail's 31. Rifle's only 4. So, I don't need to put it 3 feet off the ground in Rifle. Is it a cold climate heat pump? Make sure it's cold climate heat pump, not the old classic. What's the defrosting? And ask them to show you pictures of installations. Selecting a contractor. Here's a bunch of thoughts on recommendations. Look at their website. Do they have certification? Do they talk about heat pumps on their website at all? When you talk to them, how many heat pumps have they installed? Do they install one per month? Do they install one per year? What kind of training? Contractors, I've been in the business It's a hard job. Everyone's trying to do great things. Get 2 quotes to start. This is my recommendation. If they're more than 10% apart, get a 3rd quote. Be cautious of low quotes. And it's a bit unreasonable to compare online pricing to bids. And I will say this, the process I'm describing, it takes more time and effort and thought and design than just, okay, I need my propane furnace replaced. He drives out, looks at the size, looks at the sticker, writes a quote and says, here's the exact same furnace. It's more efficient. It's the newer model. That's what you need. Boom. Compared to what we've just described and getting a great system under a lot of money. Online, a lot of people are advertising online. You need a lot of equipment, especially mini splits. That works, but a word of caution. When you do a contractor purchase, the manufacturer stands by the warranty. The contractor's local, the distributor's local, the manufacturer's rep is local. These guys are all in Colorado generally, and they can be called and brought in and solve it. You're buying a 15-year high-end product. Online, the one thing you need to be careful is the fine print of the warranty, because sometimes it's kind of the online retailer might be the one. And, you got to, the contractors, you got to find someone who's real comfortable doing this strategy. Real quick, I want to just talk a minute. Let's see, how are we doing? Oh, I'm running a little long. So let me just say, new homes, and hopefully we're going to have a webinar sometime later this year on new homes, but basically the same size home can have many different heating loads. This is the factors. Once you know the heating load, evaluate your options. So really the first step is to talk to your contractor, talk to your GC and say, I want to get my heating load. And you could get it from someone independent, and then you have better knowledge. Heat pump systems and cool cooling. If it's a duct system, it's going to have filtering. You can add fresh air. Radiant systems, you got to have independent. And don't forget, electric floor radiant can be selectively used for comfort in homes. So, systems that are duct now are a lot better. They're quieter, they filter, they're well designed. They're really good. So heat pump, it's clearly a good option, but I know up here, radiant floor. So you can do this with timers and selective, and it works great. Okay, I don't have time really to go through. This is in there. This is for smaller homes, and this is kind of different options and initial costs. It's sort of just a basic template to start looking at saying, what about this option? What about that option? Bigger homes. Summary, cold climate heat pumps, a different beast. They work great. They save, a lot of money versus propane. Good retrofits option. Ground source heat pumps work good in larger homes. Mini splits, you've got some good options. Think of your contractor as a teammate, but really, know a bit, know the basic information, think about it. And if they don't want to give you options on heat pumps and different things, then, look for somebody that might want to do that. And talk to your local contacts. They're really great. Mary, Nikki, all the people. And also they can give you a really good, well-rounded, second voice on what you're being presented. So last thing on financing, these programs, this Renew program is fantastic. I just checked the interest rates, much lower than commercially available, and more flexibility on your credit scores. So with that, I will turn it back over to, I think, Mary or Nikki. I'm not sure who's going to be on, but thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks, Dave. I'm just going to quickly go over these local incentives for everybody so you can see what incentives are available out there in the way of rebates if you want to get a heat pump installed in your home or business. So just as a reminder, Holy Cross Energy has great incentives. If you're not actually changing from propane or gas, then they do have $600 per ton for a cold climate heat pump. But if you are changing from propane to electric, which is what we kind of talked about in this webinar, they have available to you $850 per ton for a cold climate heat pump. And keep in mind also on this list that you'll be provided this copy of the slides later, heat pump water heaters. That's what you see here at the HPWH. A lot of us also rebate heat pump water heaters. Walking Mountain Science Center, which is here in Eagle County in the Eagle River Valley between Vail and Dots Arrow, we rebate for that electrification if you're switching from propane to electric heat pump, up to $3,000 for homes and up to $6,000 for businesses. And that is above and beyond what you're getting from Holy Cross. As are your rebates from Garfield Clean Energy and Core. They are above and beyond and in addition to what you could get from Holy Cross Energy. So Garfield Clean Energy has some rebates for residential and commercial heat pumps of $1,000 and $5,000. And then that's Glenwood Springs Electric. And then Garfield Clean Energy also has commercial rebates up to $1,500. And then Core has heat pump rebates that go up to $2,500. And as I mentioned, we all list heat pump water heaters there as well. So we're going to open it up to some questions. I would encourage everybody to type some questions in where it says Q&A on the bottom of your screen. You can just click on that, a box will pop up and you can type some questions in. But Dave, we do have one question for you to get us started a little bit. And we have about 12 minutes, it looks like, to answer a few questions. So is performance data for installation at approximately 9,000 feet elevation available?
Oh yeah, yes. Basically what the contractor has to do is he takes the performance output for a specific unit and then he corrects it due to elevation. So, and there's standard tables for corrections for various elevations. Yes.
Mary, do you want to talk for a minute about what manual J-load really is and why that's something that Holy Cross Energy and other entities are requiring in order to get this rebate for a heat pump and how that is very important?
Yeah. So normally a contractor, they used to do by square footage, like it used to be a ton per every 450 square feet. But now with the heat pumps, and even if you are just going to put in a regular boiler, a propane or natural gas boiler or furnace, you really should ask the contractor to do a manual J-load calculation because they'll look at your insulation levels, the number of windows, how much passive sun you're going to get. There's a lot of factors that go into sizing these right. And if you don't size your equipment right, it's going to short cycle, and that's going to reduce the life of these heat pumps or any furnace or boiler. So a heat pump can last 20 years. It does both heating and cooling, and we have definitely this summer, especially during the smoky fire time, we got a lot of requests about what kind of rebates we give for air conditioning. And the answer is heat pumps. So we are really promoting heat pumps. We think this is going to be the technology trending for the next several years.
And I think, Mary, all that sizing right really goes along with what Dave has been trying to point out, that in the high country, in the cold climate, in our elevations, they do need to be derated a little bit so that you're getting the proper size and the proper amount of energy coming into your house to really provide the heat that you need to heat the spaces. So super important that it gets sized right.
And I can't stress, and I know Dave did, but I can't stress enough the need to install these heat pumps correctly. If they are placed on the ground, they will not work right. They do condensate some. And so all the problems that we've had have been the poor installation of them, or they've been undersized. So really choose a contractor, both Walking Mountains, Core, we all have contractor lists on our websites that you can go, and we're happy to review your bids and give you our unbiased opinion.
And make sure you get pictures. I would say, I would suggest pictures of other installs, or even go ask if you can go do a drive-by or visit.
Definitely.
And it's super important just to get involved with your local nonprofit and Holy Cross Energy before you start a project, so we can help you verify you're going to qualify for those incentives, and that you're also really just using all the best practices that you need to be using for a cold climate heat pump. Dave, is there anything else that you want to kind of summarize for us? We have about 9 minutes left. Not a lot of questions on this one, but with the time left, we might as well
this is an appendix which has a lot of information, some a little bit more. If I want to emphasize something, I think well, let's go back to the summary. So the summary, they work really well. They can be, retrofitting or replacing furnaces is a very straightforward, easy thing to do. I think just make sure the sizing is right. Same with the boilers. I would encourage people to consider mini splits. You might say, well, my furnace is pretty new. It's doing a great job. Well, I'll tell you, but my heating bill's kind of high and I'm getting tired of playing with it. You can take the second floor easily and put these up in here and do a few mini splits. And all of a sudden, half your house is now in heat pumps. So that's a really good way to go about it. If you or your friends are considering a new home, I would just urge you to start looking at these. Like I said, hopefully we're going to have something to talk about it, but start to look at these. At least you can start asking questions. And all the local resources, I'm also available at my emails out there. It's down on the bottom here. But if you're doing a new home and say, hey Dave, I'm doing a home, I just need a quick thought or opinion, happy to do that, because it's very exciting. You got a lot of good options. The other thing I should say is we did one for electric homes last week, and all of this applies to electric homes even better, even more savings. So it's about 10% better, as a matter of fact. And the next two are going to be for natural gas. Those of you, well, you're all on today, but anyone who has natural gas and is interested in the next couple of weeks, we've got a couple of those to talk about how things compare to natural gas. So I think that's probably a lot of, I think that's probably a lot more. How much?
That's great.
Any other questions?
I want to remind everybody we'll send these slides out in the follow-up email, so you can reference any of these slides that Dave's went through today to kind of remind you what has been talked about. There's lots of links within the slides, so you should be able to link right to things. I would like to mention that the other two webinars Dave mentioned, we are doing the same type of webinar about cold climate heat pumps, but we're going to talk more about natural gas customers and what are their options for choosing an electric cold climate heat pump. And that's going to be next week on Tuesday again at the same time. So that's the 26th at 5:30. And then we're going to do that same presentation again on the 30th, which is a Saturday. We know there's a lot of natural gas customers around, and we want to make sure there's plenty of opportunities for them to watch either on Tuesday evening at 5:30 or Saturday at 4. So you can register for either of those webinars on the Walking Mountains website on our calendar. Just go to the 26th or the 30th and the event will be right there, and it will take you to a register button where you can follow links. And it's very simple registration, as you know, just your name and email. So pass that information along if you have any friends that have natural gas. Any last words, Mary or Dave, before we end the webinar today?
Nikki, we just got one
Oh,
question
yay.
in. How many heat pumps have been installed in the Carbondale area? Oh, that's a great question. The tricky thing with Carbondale is some of Carbondale is in Excel Energy territory and some of it's in Holy Cross. So we've got, I know of 2 or 3 that I would say in Carbondale in our territory. So, and Carbondale, whenever you hear the weather in the morning, it's always the cold spot. So I can assure you that the heat pumps were working at -20 up in Aspen a couple winters ago. And I also had an Eagle member email me one morning, it's -16 and the heat pump is putting out, significant heat at even -16. So I haven't had anybody, like I say, if you don't install them right, you are going to have some problems and not be happy. So with a good installation and a good contractor, I think you're going to be very happy with them.
Yeah, and in this map here, like I said, thousands have been up in New England and in northern Minnesota. There's been some great studies of, actually monitoring them, measuring how they're doing in the really cold. So cold, just as cold there. We do have the elevation difference, that adds a little more, but basically if the contractor derates it and upsizes the system for the altitude, it'll do well. So these things have been out there and really, done well in the field for thousands and thousands of people, and lots of them in Canada also.
Great. Any last minute questions anybody has? We can just wait another minute just to see if anyone's going to type anything in. I don't want to cut you off, so we'll wait just another minute or so. Dave, do you want to go to the slide with the contact information for me? Just want to remind everyone that you can contact any of your local nonprofits or Holy Cross Energy if you have questions about your local incentives or anything that Dave talked about today. Or if you didn't get the information you need today and you have more questions, just let any of us know and we'll be happy to get those answers for you. And it looks like no more questions. So I think we will go ahead and end the webinar. You guys get 3 extra minutes today. That is exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dave, for all
Thanks
your
for joining us.
research and your help presenting this. Thank you, Mary, for all your help planning. And thank you again to all of our sponsors, Garfield Clean Energy, Core, Colorado Energy Office, Energy Smart Colorado, Walking Mountains, and Holy Cross. We really couldn't do this without all of us partnering in the high country like we do so often. So we look forward to bringing you many more of these webinars and presentations. Have a good night.